Good morning, everyone. First of all, I welcome representatives from the administration and the deputations and individuals for attending this meeting. This meeting is meeting with deputations on self-financing post-secondary education. I first ask deputations and individuals to put on your headphone. You can select the channel. 0 is the floor, 1 is Cantonese, and 2 is English. You may put on your headphones now. There are altogether 51 deputations and individuals attending this meeting. This meeting will be in 2 sessions. The Secretariat has received your submissions earlier, which have been circulated to members and the administration. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the submissions you have given and your oral representation will not be protected by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. I will first ask the Secretary to give us a presentation. Afterwards, I will ask each and every one of you to speak. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes. When you hear the bell, you will have to wrap up. And I ask everyone to be precise and concise. If you have further supplementation, you may do so in written form. Secretary, I would like you to start first, and please be concise and precise. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I, on behalf of the Education Bureau, sincerely thank you for spending time to prepare for this meeting and to share with us your comments, and we will be all ears. Today's topic is self-financing post-secondary education. I only have a few points to supplement. First, there are 2 important points on our policies. First, through publicly funded and self-financing post-secondary education, the development of education goes in tandem to provide a quality, diversified and flexible pathway with multiple entry and multiple exit points for school leavers to enhance their education and development on other areas. We attach importance on quality and quantity. In terms of the self-financing post-secondary education, we hope to provide quality and sustained development. 2012 is a double cohort year. And on the whole, school places will be sufficient for students going into tertiary education. And in terms of bridging, whether it is those senior year undergraduate places funded by the UGC or sub-degree programs by self-financing secondary education institution, they have been greatly increased to enhance the opportunities for secondary school graduates. And in terms of deposits and enrollment deposits, we have enhanced communication with the self-financing education institutes to work out an appropriate arrangement. And in the end, we have reached a consensus to limit the deposit to the 4 days after the release of the result of the DSE, and we have limited to below $5,000. We need to charge an enrollment deposit in a bid to minimize the wastage of places. And in terms of support, we have $3.5 billion on various subsidies, which is a self-financing post-secondary education fund. I'm not going to go into detail. In terms of quality assurance, last year, in relation to student intake and also program arrangements, we have liaised with the UGC and relevant institutions. Yesterday afternoon, I received from the inquiry panel of the Lingnan University on its inquiry results. And I will study it and then liaise with the Lingnan University. And in the report on Higher Education Review 2012, well, currently there are 3 quality assurance organizations in terms of quality assurance. They will be combined to form a uniform quality assurance agency. And in terms of quality, information transparency, in IPAS for 2013 and 14 full-time locally accredited sub-degree and degree, we have enhanced information transparency. We hope that after a committee on self-financing post-secondary education institute has been set up, we will work with it. And I thank you all for attending this public hearing, and we will be all ears, as I said. Next, we ask deputations to speak. First is Dr. Sham. Good morning, everyone. We are the Pui Ching Academy. We are a non-profit making organization. We aim at developing post-secondary education programs. We have been accredited by the Hong Kong CAAVQ, Council for Accreditation and Academic and Vocational Qualifications. In terms of healthy development of post-secondary education, I have 2 points to make in relation to the 2012 to 13 about the excessive intake. We believe that it is only a temporary problem. Education institutes will put in place appropriate arrangements to prevent it from happening again. And in terms of quality assurance organizations, we also make proposals to enhance teaching and learning. Say, for example, minimum spatial requirements for students. We support long-term development. We provide financial assistance to institutes preparing to launch post-secondary education programs. We hope our posterity will have the opportunity to learn, an opportunity to further their study to post-secondary education, so that they can shine. We play an important role. In order to meet the urgent and great demand from students of the Hong Kong DSE, we designed a program to help institutes preparing to launch undergraduate programs. We ask the administration to enhance funding and resources allocation, say for example in form of matching grant or startup grants. So to help institutions who have put in all they have to develop programs. Next is Dr. Low, Simon Low. I'm the principal of the YMCA College of Careers. We serve youngsters. We are a voluntary organization to provide post-secondary level professional training. We're a small organization. We think that when it comes to excessive intake, we have the feeling that education has become a money spinner in order to make a huge profit. If it's used to make profit, then a lot of tertiary education institutes will take in an excessive number of students in order to make more profit. Well, for small and medium-sized institutions, in the competitive post-secondary education sector, we are put in an disadvantageous position because we are restricted in a number of areas. Say, for example, we aim at launching higher diploma programs to help our youngsters. Can these students move on to universities? There may be a lot of top-up programs, but there is a bureaucratic system in place. So students from other self-financing education institutions cannot enter universities. For publicly funded programs, say for example, Yijin program or some practical vocational programs, well, we have reached tier 4 of the qualification framework. But when it comes to applying for holding programs, well, you will have to be a member of the UGC before you are able to launch such programs. An entry to this association is quite stringent, so small and medium-sized institutions cannot gain entry. It is very unfair. That's my speech. Thank you.
Next, Dr. Ho Yuk Fun. Thank you. I represent the Hong Kong Association of Career Masters and Guidance Masters. I'd like to talk about, first of all, how parents and students can be able to make an informed choice. In the process, they should be able to have all the information relating to the courses offered by the different institutions, the admission requirements, and how we can prepare these students to prepare themselves for further education and employment. In 2010, there had been, I think, there's a lot of room for further improvements. In 2013, we see that the students are also facing many difficulties, and I'll briefly cover a few. First of all, I'd like to thank the Education Bureau, who was willing to communicate with us on the app web platform. They've done a lot of work. In the course of 2 years, we found that this platform has been further and gradually enhanced. But this is only one of the channels and medium. The institutions still have a lot of autonomy to enroll students. In the process, the procedure for enrolling students, the selection criteria, and even yesterday we made inquiries to the institutions about their enrollment situation for 2012. Only a small number of institutions were willing to disclose such information. Most of them simply did not respond. And I think that in terms of transparency, there is a lot to be decided, because students and career masters are not given adequate information so that we can help the students and the parents to come to a clear decision regarding their choice. There are also a number of institutions which have their own unique system of enrollment, and I think we've alluded to this in our submission. I think this puts a lot of pressure on the students. It also adds to the burden of the teachers in schools. So in the development of self-financing educational institutions, while we understand the concern of some of the institutions, but I must emphasize that we must put the interests of students on the top priority. We shouldn't treat students as an asset. If each student were treated like an asset, and when there is the demand, then you would admit the student. Then the second question we would like to ask is what happens, to the process of education. Next, Dr. Wong. Thank you. I'm the president of the Hong Kong Buddhist College, Edwin Wong. Our mission is to provide a whole person education and to develop their sense of compassion, and that they should learn to care about their fellow men. Of course, we also attach importance on training the vocational skills of our students. We hope that all institutions, including the government-funded and non-funded institutions, will work together to provide a good learning environment so that we can develop our talents. We have 8 expectations and suggestions. First of all, we believe that the government has a duty to ensure that there is a good operating environment so that all the institutions can really achieve their educational mission and vision. Regarding the negative news about some of the self-financing post-secondary institutions, I think the government and those institutions have to improve and review the quality assurance mechanism, and there would need to be higher transparency. And thirdly, the Hong Kong Buddhist College has been established for more than 40 years. We've gone through major social transformations in Hong Kong. We are confident that the current administration can do a better job. We hope that the government can improve the operating environment of the non-government funded institutions so that students will have greater confidence in these institutions so that they can really stay in Hong Kong and further education and that they don't have to go abroad. And fourthly, I've been involved in accreditation work in both government-funded and non-funded institutions for 18 years. Regarding the self-evaluation of the 8 major institutions and also the accreditation performed by the HKCQQEA, I have great confidence. I hope that in the course of reviewing the different academic and vocational courses, they will be treated in the same manner. Fifthly, we all know that the government-funded institutions have more resources, whereas for the non-funded institutions, it's very difficult for them to, at the startup stage. I hope the government will provide, more support to the non-government-funded institutions, such as granting them, giving them a startup fund and also subsidize them in terms of land grant or even, buy places for the students. Through level 4, institutions which have attained level 4 in the qualification framework, I think these institutions should be allowed to operate government-recognized and funded Yijin certificate courses. Thank you. HAPTU, regarding the development of self-financing education institutions, I think we've been concerned about this for many years. Regarding the over-enrollment by the Lingnan University, we've read the report. We realize that some, I think, human errors have been involved. The management made many mistakes. But we're not so concerned about the persons involved, but rather the structural reasons. First of all, there is a lack of a rigorous regulatory regime, and secondly, they don't have enough resources to operate a quality post-secondary, education program. The Lingnan incident does not happen recently. 7 years ago, there was also another incident of over-enrollment. It was a social work course. The quota was 60, and they enrolled 90 students. And as a result, the course was only offered for 1 year. But this time, the over-enrollment is even more serious. And we're not talking about a single institution. Several institutions have all have the problem of over-enrollment. So 6 years down the road, the problem has not been addressed, but the problem is getting worse. There are some institutions which fail to recognize the qualification of the graduate. In some institutions, they ask the students to change to a different program because there was a lack of sufficient students when they move from year 1 to year 2. Over the years, all these problems have happened, which shows that there is a lack of proper regulation, and also there is a lack of resources for these institutions to operate this course as well. So I think for the 8 institutions and the other self-financing institutions, we need a mechanism for vigorous regulation. The regulatory regime should be reasonable and allow for professional autonomy. But we do need regulation. It's like a football match. It's not imaginable. We can't imagine that there is no rules and no referee. Otherwise, people will play against the rules. And it's not just a question of human mistakes, but there's we're talking about flaws in the system. Secondly, a more fundamental problem is that many of these school sponsoring bodies don't have enough resources. With the lack of such resources, they need to compress a lot of things. They would need to rely on the tuition revenue from tuitions to pay for the mortgages, and as a result, it has a adverse impact on the quality of education. These institutions have to struggle to survive rather than strive to improve in quality. We think the government should give them regular subsidy. We propose $30,000 per student every year. For details, I would like to invite members to read our written submission. Next, Dr. Keith Lam from the Hong Kong U Space Poleang Cook Community College. We are a sister institution of the Hong Kong U Space. So I'd like to ask Professor T.M. Wong to speak on behalf of both institutions, the University of Hong Kong School of Professional and Continuing Education. Thank you. I represent the Hong Kong University and also Hong Kong U, the two institutions under Hong Kong U Space, to make my submission today. Hong Kong U Space in the past have been very much in support of the government's policy regarding post-secondary education. More than 10 years ago, this policy was promulgated. It was suggested that sub-degree courses should be offered. We were the first institution to set up a community college. 6 years down the road, we collaborated with Poleang Cook and set up the second community college. We also support the government's proposal that in Hong Kong we should have private universities and self-financed degree programs. This year we've set up our Centennial College. Over the years, we've followed our conscience and have been offering quality education to our students. For the administration, I have two suggestions. First of all, I hope the government can help these private self-funded institutions to build their own campuses. A school campus campus life is an essential part of university or tertiary education. I hope the government can provide us with monetary grants and land grants so that we would be able to build our own campuses. And secondly, for historical reasons or perhaps for cultural reasons, our associate degree have not got the recognition that it deserves. I hope the government will create more posts for graduates of these associate degree graduates. Many years ago, the government has the executive officer grade, and A-level graduates can apply for such posts. Why can't we open these positions to graduates of our associate degree programs? I'm sure there are many such similar posts that which can be open to the associate degree graduates to apply. I think after finishing the associate degrees, I think the students will, go through 2 additional years of education after the DSE. I think this is good for the community. It's good to improve the educational standard of our population. I would like to recommend to you the findings of a research or study by Professor Chung of the Chinese University. I'm sure you'll be able to look up the information. Well, I'll give you one more minute. Professor Chung Yuping, a few years ago, was given a subsidy by the Hong Kong Research Council to carry out a study. It was a study which compares graduates of the DSE, associate degree at universities by comparing the salaries, their earning capacity, and their employment prospects. And in all three respects, I think all these were directly correlated with the number of years that the student has received education. Namely, the university graduates will receive the most, and next will be the graduates of associate degree programs, and finally the DSE graduates. And this is contrary to the comments made by the media. Many media suggest that it is useless to attend the sub-degree courses because even after they finish with their studies, they wouldn't be able to earn a lot of money. That's not true. Furthermore, studying for 2 more years is definitely better than not doing that. Next, Professor Chang. On behalf of the Hong Kong Association of Heads of Secondary Schools, I would like to express our concern. Of course, our major concern is the prospect of our graduates. Over the last decade or so, there have been fundamental changes in basic education. We used to have the CE education, now we have the DSE. And because of this change, previously only A-level students can be admitted to universities. But nowadays all students, so long after they finish with the DSE program, they are already eligible for admission to these institutions. But the development of post-secondary education apparently has not caught up with the development of basic education. Today, we're still talking about 18 to 20% of our students admitted to universities, and if you include the other self-financing institutions, be they degree or sub-degree courses, we're only talking about 60%. So the tertiary institution has not change along with changes in primary education, basic education. Many of DSE secondary school graduates are welcomed by overseas institutions, many of which really appreciate the academic achievements and performance of our secondary school graduates, and many of them try very hard to attract our secondary school graduates to study in the institutions. But in Hong Kong, we have not been able to retain such talents in Hong Kong. I was very happy to hear the secretary who told us that there will be planning and adjustments for tertiary education, especially need for fine-tuning for the policies towards government-funded and self-financed tertiary institutions. I read from the press that the private universities will be offering courses which are not offered by the universities. I think this might be an obstacle to the self-financed institutions. I hope the Education Bureau can provide for some incentives to attract well-known overseas institutions to operate tertiary education in Hong Kong, and to provide incentives for them to offer the more so-called exotic courses. I hope that in terms of bridging, or I hope that there will be more pathways available for graduates of the sub-degree courses to articulate to the degree programs. Next, Professor Shi. If you look at the report on tertiary education, I think that report is like a crystal ball which predicted what has happened nowadays. I think their recommendation studies recommended that there should be a unified quality assurance scheme. But this important recommendation has not been followed upon. Recommendation 34 required the community college to be delinked from the universities. Why do we have this strange recommendation? Looking at the UK, the US, Canada, and Australia, we've never seen any universities operating these community colleges. So in each country, you'll find that while the university will accept graduates from the community college, but they're not directly linked. But this time, some community college have actually, overrun the students using the name of the institution. So they can easily ruin the reputation of a university. All our universities have a good international standing. They are funded by taxpayers' money. So should we allow these things to happen? So I hope we will be able that the UGC will immediately implement the recommendations of that report, and after community colleges have been dealing from the universities, there would be a stringent quality assurance scheme to regulate these self-financing institutions. CAP 320, I think if you study it, you'll find it really ridiculous because it requires the students to have a health check once every month. And thirdly, even coupons are offered to kindergarten students, why is it that the students in our tertiary institutions are helping those institutions to pay for the mortgages? I hope members will pay attention to this problem. In terms of employment, and Dr. Wong suggested that the government should open more of the government posts to graduates of sub-degree programs. I'm not too worried about that. I think for parents who can afford it, they've already sent their children overseas. Most of the institutions recruit students from the middle or lower classes. So especially for students who are involved in the over-enrollment incident this time, have you considered whether there will be any level 2 government positions which are open for them to apply? So I wouldn't blame the Education Bureau. I see that they're working very hard to improve, to provide additional support, and so on and so forth. I hope the UGC and the president of the universities will really, take steps to improve quality and to implement the recommendations of the report.
Next one, Paul Lam from CTU. All along CTU attaches importance to quality of programs. Self-finance programs are no exception. The Community College of CTU made a decision when it was set up that the sub-degree programs are also accredited or have the degrees conferred by CTU. Therefore, it is under the same quality assurance mechanism as the university. Procedures, mechanism are actually based on regulation laid down by the Senate, the highest academic body of the university. Besides CTU also has its School of Continuing Education, which offers articulation programs offered by overseas institutions and is subject to the same quality assurance mechanism. Overseas institutions also send staff to be represented on academic bodies responsible for the CC and the School of Continuing Education. As for student enrollment, whether for the community college or College of Further Education, we do have a quotas for students. We allow for a deviation of 5%. And because when a college issues offers, it cannot be sure how many students will take up the offer. Therefore, our institutions accept students by phases. Depending on the response in the initial rounds, it will actually make adjustments to the final student enrollment within a deviation or margin of 5%. Last year, we accepted 0.8% less, but in the past year, we accepted 4.7% more. I'd like to point out that associate degrees holders in Hong Kong do have quite favorable employment prospects for our students. 72% of our associate degree graduates move on to further study. 1/3 of the students who move on to further studies are enrolled in government-funded places. Another 1/3 went overseas, while the remaining actually go for self-finance programs. So I think there's good quality assurance for our programs. Sorry. Next one is Dr. Simon Wong from Hong Kong Baptist University. Thank you. Hong Kong Baptist University welcomes the government's efforts over the past decade to provide more self-financed places for young people. Actually, the year 14 to 15, 1/3 of the relevant age group will be able to have access to tertiary education, and that shows the effectiveness of the policy, which is designed to provide manpower for the knowledge economy. Even though in the past there have been quite a lot of associate degree holders who go on to senior places funded by the government or move on to work elsewhere. Those are successive cases, but because of the lack of a unified standards, the government also lacks long-term commitment. There have been much concerns about the quality of various graduates from various programs. Hong Kong BU actually is going to make several proposals here to ensure that self-financed or government-funded tertiary students are of the right quality. Firstly, there should be unified standards for 2-year or 4-year self-funded programs. In the current year, a small number of institutions over-enroll students. Because of that, we propose that institutions offering associate degree and degree places should be subject to guidelines for both hardware and software. Simply put, each student in any institution should be entitled to a certain average personal space and a maximum quota for enrollment. And the calculation for the space allocated to each student should include libraries and other laboratories and other learning facilities. Curriculum-wise, I think before a program is offered, we need to make sure that the library actually has a certain number of books for that particular program, and there are adequate facilities for the provision of that program. There should be also a fixed teacher-student ratio. We do need large support from the government, financial support from the government, to make sure that all the above happen. The government is funding degree places now. We do hope that the government will continue to increase its funding for sub-degrees. Next one is Ms. Chu Yim Sum. Yes, I'm from the Hong Kong Association of Squint and Double Vision Sufferers. We do hope that the government would pay attention to disabled and poor students. Recently, actually since 2008, the government has stopped issuing Social Security payments to the disabled or poor families. So the result is that many disabled students actually dare not take up further studies because they don't want to take out huge loans to pay for the tuitions. In the year 2011, the Census and Statistics Department find that there are more than 80,000 students with visual impairment. And there will be 4,000 students who are disabled who are graduating from Form 4, Form 3 or Form 5 in the few years ahead. So what will be the prospects for these disabled graduates? They have been trying hard to study, and they do hope to move on to university so they can find a better job to improve their livelihoods. But now that they are not entitled to Social Security payment, and they may end up having to borrow huge loans to pay for tuitions, what will happen to them in the future? I hope that the government can actually explore more channels to actually provide the care and support needed by these disabled students, so that society will not be as utilitarian. We do have this group of disabled students who actually have nowhere else to go. Thank you. Next one is Professor Danny Wong from OpenU. Good morning. I come from OpenU. OpenU is a university founded by the government, and yet now we are self-financing. The government has been proactively promoting self-financed education. We do appreciate the efforts, and yet there's room for improvement. The over-enrollment issue, of course, is due to various factors. Because of time constraint, I will only highlight two factors. First, we feel that the reason is because there are different quality assurance mechanisms. Over-enrollment would not happen at self-financed institutions, because as a self-financed institution, we are bound to actually determine the number of students enrolled on the basis of facilities and teachers available. And yet, for the government-funded institutions, because of their own quality assurance mechanisms, they may adopt different criteria. Therefore, there could be a loophole there. I'm very pleased to hear the Secretary just then that they would unify the quality assurance mechanism. I hope that that would actually really be enforced. And the other point is unfair competition. Self-financed institutions have to be non-profit-making institutions. Of course, government institutions are also non-profit-making, but for self-financed institutions, whatever profits they make or any surplus they have, it has to be plowed back into their courses to improve quality. And yet, for government-funded institutions, the surplus earned could be given or handed over to the institution, to the universities. The universities may not be profit-making, but they can actually use the surplus handed over to them to support their own development. Therefore, we see that we're using money gained from the underprivileged to subsidize departments in the government institutions, and that's unfair. Just then, several speakers, like Wong King Paul, mentioned that self-financed institutions do need a lot of support. For example, we need to have a kick-off fund. Just then, someone also mentioned whether there can be subsidy to self-financed institutions on a per capita basis. That's worthy of consideration. Next one is Mr. Lee Shing Hong. Yes, I'm Secretary General of Hong Kong Federation of Students. Our federation comprises student unions from all 8 institutions, and people have talked about the importance of protecting student interests. With us today are the president of student unions from various universities and self-financed institutions like Hang Seng and Shu Yan. We want to present students' requests now. Our discussion today was sparked by the over-enrollment at Ningnan, but higher education actually involves problems not just in sub-degrees, but the entire tertiary education. The government should be there to protect educational quality, and yet the government has taken the lead in actually introducing the market mentality to the sector. Once an education professor described the what's happening in higher education as a cultural revolution. That is, the basis of our education and values of our education have been destroyed in the catastrophe that the sector was subject to. Some vice presidents described the development of associate degrees as a kind of cultural revolution. The government promoted them, and yet there's no guarantee for employment of associate degree graduates, and neither is there any guarantee of quality control. Education Secretary was asked to admit responsibility, and yet he paid no heed to it. Why is it that Education Secretary need not shoulder any responsibility for what happened? The UGC asked that the Education Bureau should set up a steering committee to look into the over-enrollment at Ingnan issue. The Quality Assurance Council is a failure. That's why it's now time to change the assessment mechanism. We need to set up a monitoring mechanism to improve the quality of self-finance programs. There's wide gap in the quality of such programs, and ultimately it's because of the government's unwillingness to devote or to allocate resources into education, and yet it wants to raise the percentage of young people with access to tertiary education to 60%, and yet the number of or the percentage of degree places is capped at only 19%. There's little monitoring of the self-finance programs. So this is the consequence of actually introducing market-oriented mentality to the sector. Even the deposit students have to pay for the self-finance programs are very high. We urge now that the government should provide more support to self-finance programs. For example, in terms of campuses and subsidy for students, there need to be more educational resources in increasing the number of degree and associate degree places. There are too many issues with higher education, and parents and students cannot actually put their minds at ease. Thank you. Next one is Chairman Fei from the Student Union from Poly U, Andy Chen. Actually, these self-finance associate degree programs of various universities are approved by the University Senate only. But the members of Senate have limited understanding of sub-degree programs. Do they know the resources needed and what the associate degree students need? And how much do they know about programs? I'm a member of the Senate at Poly U myself. I can tell you that at the meetings, I saw that all the Senate members have very limited understanding of sub-degree program. So why are they entitled to assess the qualifications or the quality of associate degree programs? The chairman of today's meeting used to be a director of Poly U. One member here, electrical member Chen Ken-mang, is also a council member of Poly U. But I don't think he's here today. I'm also member of of the consultative committee at the university. We know that HKCC, the Community College of Poly U, is a company in itself. HKCC really is a company as a community college. So is it actually providing education or running a business? Is it motivated to look after the interests of students or maximize its profits? Is HKCC, the community college, simply making use of the self-accrediting status of Poly U to open programs to make money, regardless of students' interests? I think it's all clear to all of us. We all know what's happening. Just then, university representatives said that they support the government's self-financing policy. I think that's ridiculous. Education is our right. We don't want commercialization of education. Why is it that students have to do sub-degree programs on a self-financing basis? Why is it that why will there be programs cut? And why are sub-degree programs not funded by the government? Why is the government going to cut all government-funded sub-degree programs in the years ahead? Secretary, please don't shift the responsibility of supporting education to the market. You should bear the responsibility instead. Next one is Mr. Chen Tak-wan. Good morning. I'm a member of Tertiary Action. I study at CTU. I came here at 9 this morning because I wanted to tell you my views about self-finance programs. But as we all know, we're just actually here for decoration purpose or for cosmetic exercise, where we don't have a government who's elected by universal suffrage. So nobody would really listen to us. Secretary adopts the same attitude. He's not going to listen to us. But I don't want to waste this opportunity to tell you what I think, and the misfortune of self-financed programs. In 94 to 95, there are 14,500 degree places, and now we have 15,000 degree places. There has been a slight increase in the number, and over the period, not just there has been a rise in the number of relevant age group, and Hong Kong is now in a knowledge economy. During the Tung Chee Kwan administration, there was a goal of reaching the 60%. Of having, I think 60% of young people have access to tertiary education. And Donald Tsang's administration also promoted the 6 pillars of economy. And yet, the number of university places remain at 18 to 19%. So the government relies on market forces to enhance the ratio of students with access to tertiary education, which means that we rely on the sub-degree or self-financed sub-degree programs. In other words, the government has no commitment to creating more places. We have more than 30,000 associate degree graduates a year, and yet the median salary of these graduates fell from 18,000 to 12,300. And because of the government's reduction of associate degree places from 15,615 to 7,091 places. In terms of that means more students actually are shouldering more burdens, financial burdens to support their education. And people also look at associate degrees as inferior degrees. One friend of mine studied a self-financed social science associate degree, and then he did another half government-funded social work programs. He took that person $78,000 to shoulder the 2 courses, and every month he also had to give money to his family and give out a lot on transportation. And after some years, my friend has still not been able to repay his loans accumulated. Therefore, there's not adequate support for these students by the government.
But I believe that everyone should have a right to education. Everyone should enjoy an opportunity to go to university. We are not the money spinners of universities. We don't want universities to be turned into commercial commodities. Next, Ms. Chen Shifai. Hello, I'm the president of the Lingnan University Students' Union. I would like to talk about the problem of our university. As you know that yesterday there was the report of our university. Well, in a few words, it said that the management has been given a free rein, and this problem has been reviewed, and so far the students have been harmed. And it's because of these problems that there are conflicts between students and teachers, between teachers, and also the students between schools. The problem still plague the university today, and students will still have to go to school during holiday. And I think this is something to do with turning education into an industry. The university made use of the double cohort year, so they maximize their profit to over-enroll students to build up their reserve. We can see that actually the two colleges cannot provide a good environment for students, because students have to go everywhere to have their lessons, and teachers are the same. They will have to even go to different districts. What we see is that it has affected the education, the learning environment. This has also affected the learning lessons. And this is something to do with their learning hours and also their qualification. As you can see, the two institutions have ignored the welfare of students. We see that the management has completely destroyed the procedure. They do whatever they wanted. Under UG's UGC institution Halo, they glaringly flouted all the rules when it comes to self-financing programs, and the departments are given free rein to enroll however many students they want. We're talking about an over-enrollment of 8,000 students because of autonomy and universities regulating themselves. They can change the admission procedure however they want. Lingnan University rolled out the higher diploma program, and this has completely flouted the entire procedure. It is ludicrous. And I think this is the responsibility of the Education Bureau, because they have a delegated power of admission to the institutions, and there is no supervision or regulation, and then there is no importance attached to the learning environment and the quality whatsoever. So I implore the Education Bureau, although they cannot do anything at the moment, to set up a regulation procedure and to help the students, so that remedial measures can be put in place. Next, Ms. Ho Kit Wang. I'm also from the Lingnan University Student Union, and the recent problem has turned Lingnan University into a shop. And because of the 311 academic structure, they have increased the number of students. However, when the program started, you see all the problems surfacing. And there has been altogether an over-enrollment by 4,000 students. And they say that they will provide good education for students and to offer all-round education programs for them. But students don't have even the space to sit down, and some courses will have to be cancelled because there is no teachers, and in some English courses they just find some English speakers to just say a few words. And students have to go to a completely different district to go to school. And there is no insufficient number of lessons, and the lesson period will have to be reduced by hours. And very often there is a mix of students that makes teaching difficult. Students don't know how many hours they have to go for the lessons. They just know they have to go for their lessons. And for a long time, students don't have their student cards. They don't have the teaching materials. They can't make their courses. They can't form their timetables. And some people will have makeup lessons, whereas others have none. They don't even know the examination period. Some people say that they have worked very hard at their A-level, and in the end, that's what they become. They just want to study hard, but Lingnan University just want to enroll more and more students, and they make use of the new academic structure to profit themselves. So since the university has become self-financing in their self-financing arms, they just look at profit. And CY Leung gave a medal to the dean and Mr. Chen Zhensing. And this is shameful, because he was the person responsible for the over-enrollment, and he deserved a medal. And it was said that he had made great contributions to quality education. What kind of quality education has he contributed to? He was challenged, but he did not have any answer, and he had a smile on his face when he received the medal. Students are working very hard, and while studying, they have to go to different complaint departments to air their grievances, and at the same time, they have to try to save themselves. They are people who have been left out because of the elite education system. I'm speaking for them here. Ms. Ho, you said, what is your position in the Lingnan University Student Union? I am the president of the External Affairs of the Student Union. Next, Mr. Ng Chung Tat. I'm the president of the Student Union of the Hong Kong Shu Yan University. I'm here to speak about the commercialization of institutions. The government said that whether it's the publicly funded or self-financing, they asked education institutions that they should focus on quality education. But the assurance itself is lacking because there is no quality assurance organization system in place. There are 43% revenue of the Shu Yan University, but we don't 34% of revenue surplus from the Shu Yan University, but we don't know where the money has gone to. We don't have enough space. The university told us that there is no money and it will take time for everything to be improved, but we paid a hefty tuition fees while we receive a low-quality education. This is very unfair to us. And in a very short time, our school fees have been heftily increased. People are very unhappy. So we think that there should be more transparency in self-financing institutions. When it comes to quality of programs, the government paper said that there are problems with quality of the programs. I think apart from the institutions themselves, it's also the responsibility of the government. They commercialize education, and they've given free rein to the institutions. So there is no standard or uniform quality assurance. The institutions themselves regulate themselves. There is no quality assurance. They just want the self-financing programs to make up the shortfall of school places. And in a report, they talk about Shu Yan to be upgraded. And it was said in the report that Shu Yan will be a small university and they will offer a corresponding level of quality. There is no mention about increasing their funding to just a normal university. There is insufficient funding. The government should increase its funding and assistance and also ensure quality of programs. Education is a right, a natural right. So we should not receive an inferior quality of program simply because it is a self-financing institution and an inferior learning environment because we have paid a high tuition fee. The government has commercialized the education sector. They have completely given a free rein to institutions. This is unhealthy. There is no regulation or rules to guarantee quality. Student unions don't enjoy a respectable status. Next, Mr. Oscar Low. Hello, I'm from 副學士輔助大聯盟, an alliance for sub-degree students. Well, there are a lot of problems, and one of the problems is that the government have no commitment when it comes to sub-degree programs. Students who have met the minimum requirement of university education cannot get a place, and they have been forced to take sub-degree program. But there is a stigmatization when it comes to sub-degree programs. We're labeled losers. We're given cold shoulders by society. And after we've graduated, we are burdened by a huge loan. And it's commonplace that you have to repay a student loan of $100,000. If we want to go to publicly funded university, we will have to work extra hard, and the chance is slim. And if we don't get into university in the end, we will have to live with the stigmatization. We'll be given a second class label, and we have a very we have a huge loan to repay, and we're being treated as just another secondary school graduate. I wonder, isn't education a natural right? Why is it now a commercial product? Teachers told me that when I select my courses, I should focus on how much money I can make. And if I don't have to pay as much in tuition fees, I will have to select less popular courses. But when it comes to learning, shouldn't we choose what interests us? When we receive education, isn't it to help us move upward socially? But we're being fleeced by the commercial education sector. We are consumers. We're not students. Teachers are service providers, not teachers. And I hope that the number of subsidized places can be increased and to enhance the status of sub-degree programs. Next, Mr. Jolie. Good morning, everyone. Well, I see that the secretary is rubbing his eyes, so I would like to wake you up for a bit by telling you a story. There's this person, he wanted to be successful and he worked really hard at the A level, but he did not do too well. So like many other students, he studied in a community college of the Tonghua Groups of Hospital for a sub-degree program. He worked really hard, and but his result wasn't too good. It's because of 0.01 GP lower GP. He just was so close to getting a university place. He didn't want to borrow from others. Because he's from a poor family, for repeating he will have to pay over $10,000, and because of tremendous pressure, he committed suicide. He jumped from a building so he could not see the new year. Is it because of his poor academic performance? Is it because he's poor that he can't get university education? Is he a secondary class citizen? That's why he didn't get an education opportunity. Why should graduates be burdened with a huge student loan? Everyone is entitled to an education, regardless of his competence or means. We're only talking about a chance to learn. Why do we have to turn education into a commercial product? Why are students turning into money spinners? And I do think that it would be appropriate to call the Secretary for Education a merchant of, a businessman of education. What is university education about? For you to make money, or an admission ticket to high society? You see that there are some people in front of me. They practically put on an advertisement for their institutions. They wanted to get more funding or resources. So apart from launching the brainwash curriculum, what else can you do? I am ashamed of you. This person I mentioned is He Zhongho. He's not a file number. People with a conscience, can you maybe just stand up and observe some silence, a minute of silence for this student? Next is Mr. Sikaming. Well, if you're observing a minute of silence, you are getting in my way. Could you maybe wait for some other time to do it?
嘉明嗱，薛嘉明，如果你唔發言，我就下一位噶啦。不要大學商品化，不要大學商品化，還我大學普及教育。請大家尊重會。
Please respect the meeting and be quiet. The meeting is in session. Mr. Kenneth Chan, you will have to do that since they have completed with what they were doing. I can continue. Mr. Sika Ming, I am the president of the student union of the Hang Seng Management College. Is there you were scratching your head? Well, starting from the time when the government turned education into a commercial property, and I think they washed their hands. Yes, the government can cut expenditure, but it is students who pay the price. Students will have to pay a high tuition fees. They spend $60,000 for just 1 year. So in the end, for 4 years, they will have to have a student loan of over $200,000. Self-financing programs are low-cost, offer low-cost courses or business courses. What do you think students can make after they've graduated? How many years would it take them to pay off their loan? In October last year, the administration issued a consultation document about the self-financing ordinance, and I think this only push forward the commercialization of the education sector. Well, there are wordings deleting approval from the chief executive and funding approval, etc. I think they have completely ignored the problems plaguing tertiary education. The ordinance was in place in 1960. What about the composition of the board of the university? Some of the members are people like C.Y. Leung, the Wolf. For these private tertiary education institutions, there is no regulation whatever, and there is a lack of transparency. Information cannot flow freely. Say, for example, for the Hang Seng Management College, well, there is no student representative in the board. So how can students help in the decision that will improve the environment for students? Has there been any regulations whatsoever? And the Xi'an president, Xi'an Student Union president, talk about there is no mechanism about the spending of money in Xi'an. If there are billions of enrollment deposit, there is no mechanism to monitor its spending. There are a large number of self-financing programs. Well, they want to have more private universities, but they don't give them land. They ask the institutions to build the buildings themselves, and in the end, students are asked to pay. So more and more enrollment fees will have to be paid, and they will have a bigger loan.
Mr. Benny Zhang, my name is Benny Zhang. I am a third-year student of the Hang Seng School of Management. Today, I would like to talk about the problems facing the self-financing tertiary institutions in my capacity as a student. In 2000, that's 13 years ago, in Tung Chee-hwa's policy address, he said that Hong Kong should become a regional educational hub, and that 33% of our population will go up to 60% who would have university qualification. Apparently, he said that he has accomplished that. I don't want. But the point is that UGC places only stay at 18%. So how did he come up with the 60%? So he did so by creating so many of these associate degree programs, and if the target is not yet met, he will increase the number of these self-financing courses. We now have all these that large number of these self-financing institutions. Since these self-financing courses institutions, you leave them to the market. You leave it to the market. And the government is simply, washing its hands like the tertiary institution ordinance, you've made several amendments, but you only want to make relaxations to allow more of these so-called institutions to be registered as self-financing tertiary institutions, because you want to, I think, what should have been done by the Education Bureau. The Bureau is actually, asking the market to take on the responsibilities which should have been that of the Bureau. But I don't think that's right. The students are most concerned about, other than education quality, we're more concerned about cost. Most of us here are. Most of you here, except the student representatives, are wealthy. But take my institution, for example. For year one, we pay $62,000 per annum, $65,000 for the third and fourth year. We need to pay more than $250,000 for the whole program. Where does the money come from? A year earlier, our president said that the Hang Seng School of Management is, running a deficit of several $1 million every year, and because rising costs, there's a need to increase fees. For this new institution, the major costs would be infrastructures. But other than providing industry loan and land grant, what other assistance does the government give? I think other than the interest-free loans, the institutions are forced to enroll as many students as possible at the expense of education quality, so that the tuition fees are used to pay for the mortgages. For a self-financing private tertiary institution, how can it obtain the funding it needs? They do not have the history and reputation like the Hong Kong University. We don't have a strong alumni. So you suggest that the institution should find its own funding, but okay. Next, Mr. Ngai Ho Chun. Good morning, Mr. Johnny I. I'm one of the students studying the BBA program of the Hang Seng School of Management. Two of my peers, our president, student union president, said that I like to make certain points. I like to supplement a point regarding infrastructures. I think the infrastructure should be paid for by the government rather than for the students who pay several tens of thousands of dollars of tuition fees in order to pay for the expenses on the infrastructures. Have you ever considered that this is really, I think for the earlier, I think our school has only been set up for 3 years. So in other words, the first batch of students have to pay for these infrastructures, which will benefit the later generation of students, and this is not fair. I also like to talk about the fees charged by the Hang Seng School of Management. I'm a BBA Year 1 student, and this year I'm paying $62,000 of tuition fees, and I can give you some figures. Well, after you've looked at these figures, you will find out how ridiculous it is. I'm the third, batch of students. For the first batch, Year 1 student pay $52,000. For the second batch, the tuition was $55,000 to $58,000, but this year it's gone up to $62,000, which means that every year the school is steadily increasing our fees. It has not set up a limit at all. The administration and the management of the school would steadily increase the fees every year in order that they were able to make a profit. This has created a division among students, and education has become a commercial commodity, and this is obvious to all. Furthermore, the institution is not governed by the Tertiary Institution Ordinance, and furthermore, the Board of Governors are not on the board. The board is not represented by students. They can operate within a dark box. And on the subject of tuition fees, as in the case of the Xi'an University, there is an issue regarding transparency. This year we've paid more than $60,000 of fees, but we don't know whether the fees have been spent or to pay for the infrastructure or on improving education quality. we want the school administration to give us a detailed report and tell us where the money has been spent, whether that's been used to pay for the mortgages, so that we have our right to know it's being guaranteed. Also, we pay more than $60,000 for it's more expensive than what students pay for UGC program, but the quality it's not as good. For example, in our school, the timetable for exams is spread over 20 days, and we have to compress our exams within a few days. And also, there are problems with the airdrop mechanism. So regarding the Hang Seng School of Management, I think they are exploiting the students to the full. I hope the government and the business community will really, pay attention to these problems. Well, I think we're finished with the deputations for the first session. Mr. Secretary, would you give a preliminary response to all the points made by the deputations, including, poor management, lack of proper supervision, and lack of resources? Thank you, Chairman. Once again, I'd like to thank all the students and deputations for sharing with us your experience and also for your suggestions. We've heard all of you. But I'd like to clarify a few points on the subject of whether or not there are sufficient resources to support these institutions. Every year we spend more than $10 billion on tertiary education. In Hong Kong, 1/5 of the government's expenditure is being spent on education. Coming back to the number of school places, some students ask whether or not we have achieved the target of 60%. I can give you some figures for this year. Over the past year, last year was the year of double cohort. We have 100,000 DSE graduates. And for the total number of government-funded tertiary places, the total is 30,300. On top of that, we have the top-up places for associate degree graduates. We're talking about more than 4,000. So overall, we have about 38,000 places. According to the Hong Kong CAQ and so on, we have accredited courses. The total number is 39,500. So taking them all together, we have more than 70,000. So 70,000 out of about 100,000. For tertiary education, I believe we've achieved the target of 60% of our students receiving tertiary education. Secondly, the question of the overall management and supervision of these institutions. This is very important in Hong Kong. Other than government-subvented tertiary institutions, which are regulated by the UGC. For the others, we have our education ordinances to regulate such institutions. All these registered institutions which receive some form of government assistance, either by land grant or startup loan, to help them, launch their programs. I think we're doing this on an ongoing basis. Regarding support for students, at the Education Mission, I've also mentioned that we're doing our work along several lines. I've actually read the figures. Through the Student Loan Finance Office, I think that office has done a good job. Just talking about subsidy for students, about 32 to 35% of the students have been given grants, which don't have to be repaid. And for the means-tested and non-means-tested loans, we talk about 5 to 12%. Secondly, on average, the total amount of loan carried by the student upon graduation. The average size of the loan is about 45,000 Hong Kong dollars. All these are concrete figures, and I think we can further, have further discussions about this. And thirdly, I was going to respond to you regarding the question of supervision. Although the tertiary institutions and the self-financing tertiary institutions, they all have a high degree of autonomy and are able to govern themselves, but still there are regulations in place. In 2010, the UGC conducted a study, and we now have a three-tier system for quality assurance, both for the self-financing institutions and the government-funded institutions. We want to implement the UGC's recommendation. We want to have a standardized supervisory system, and we're working towards that direction. Basically, these are the few areas that we would like to clarify. We'll now go to the Q&A session. Let me see how many members would like to speak before I decide on the time to be assigned to each member. Ms. Wong Pik Wan, Dr. Chen Ka-lok, Deputy Chairman, Mr. Paul Chair, Mr. Ma Fong Kwok. We have 5 members. Shall we say 4 minutes for each member? That's inclusive of both the question and the answer. I'd like to remind all members that according to Section 83(8) of our Rules of Procedures, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest relating to the issue we discussed today, you will need to make a disclosure. I also want members to be as concise as you can with both your questions and response. Madam Wong Pik Wan. Fernando Zhang, okay, you're the last one. So 4 minutes each. We need to finish at 11:25. Thank you. I'd like to thank our friends from the academic institutions and the students for coming here to give us the views. I have several questions. Many deputations asked us government to clarify whether or not education is a basic right or is it a commercial commodity. They also query as to why associate degree students would have to pay for their own education. Although the Secretary said that's not the case, the government also used public funds to provide startup loans and student loans and so on. While we know all that, but what the students are saying is that these subsidies are not good enough or properly used. Mr. Fong from the PTU also asked the government to provide each sub-degree students to the tune of $30,000 per annum. I have forgotten to declare my interest. I'm a lecturer, at the Poly University. The Poly U also has a community college, but I'm not involved in anything related to the operations of that institution. Mrs. Si Mei Chan is actually my senior when we were attending secondary schools, and I have not taught at her school. She asked the government the question, which was that in 2010, in the report on the review on tertiary education, the report suggested that we should set up a unified quality assurance mechanism for all tertiary institutions. She asked why we still don't have this standardized or unified quality assurance mechanism. In your paper, you say there are 3 different quality assurance mechanisms in place. My question is that even in your paper, you say the government will explore the possibility that in the end we need to have a single and standardized quality assurance mechanism. So what's the timetable for you to do that, and what are your difficulties for not implementing that now? And thirdly, you propose that Ms. Wong, please be focused, otherwise there wouldn't be enough time for him to respond. Okay, why didn't you answer these two questions first? Secretary. Thank you. First of all, we have two mechanisms to help implement our policies. First of all, the government-subvented part, that is through the UGC, that's coordinated by the UGC. For the other tertiary institutions, we want to have a pluralistic multi-pathway structure. We want to allow the maximum autonomy for them to respond to demand. We want to give them maximum flexibility. So on that premise, we have only limited resources. For every $5 that we spend, the government spends $1 is spent on education. So we can only make the most use of the limited resources to provide different forms of assistance. The biggest problem is land. I think we've done a lot in this regard, and we're still doing that. And secondly, the institutions are telling us that they can be self-financing, but they will have a difficulty at the startup stage, and that's why we have the startup loan in place. And thirdly, many students may have financial difficulties. We want to ensure that all students who want to enroll for tertiary education will not be deprived of that opportunity because of financial reasons. Mr. Yip Kin Yun, since the chairman is not satisfied, may I invite the secretary to provide an answer that will be satisfactory to both Ms. Wong and myself. The deputations have raised very specific issues. They asked a question about the role of government, which is supervision and providing subsidies. I heard from the students of the Hang Seng School of Management saying that asking whether or not the infrastructure expenditure should be borne by the Education Bureau. And regarding the recurrent subsidies, can the students get a better treatment, as suggested by the PTU? So perhaps the secretary could elaborate more on this point. For education funding over the last few years, I think they're taking up a smaller and smaller percentage of government total expenditure. Secretary.
Let me continue to answer the questions. We're determined that is on the issue of governance and quality assurance to work and try to make improvement. The 8 institutions funded by UGC are governed by a JQ council, a joint quality council. And secondly, for self-financing institutions, there is a separate body. And thirdly, Hong Kong CCAQ is another monitoring body. 2 key points here: self-monitoring and external audit. We do hope that there can be fewer chances of internal audits and have more external bodies involved in monitoring. The matching grant would require that if universities are to join the matching grant scheme, the institutions must accept external audits. That is an important new policy. And timetable? Well, I think, sorry, Secretary, can you focus on the issues, please? Well, whether each one should be given a $30,000 subsidy, it really depends on the resources available and the rationale for giving the subsidy, and also how to make good use of resources and issues related to vouchers and so forth. We do adopt an open attitude, and we'll see what is the best way forward. Well, the government does play a role in providing more funding. Do you think there's a role to play? If we cannot, well, our principle is that we try to provide as much support as we can, but we do need to look at what is the best form of support that should be available. Chairman and Vice Chairman, Vice Chairman, when you ask the Secretary questions, please let me know beforehand. Well, let me say that just then, internally, the Education Bureau has set up a management committee to study the actually monitoring of self-financing institutions, and we'll try to call up a meeting as soon as possible. Chairman, can you ask a question on infrastructure as soon as possible or later on? Next one is Kenneth Chen. Secretary, you heard today from various students. Well, they are actually victims, and the families are facing a dilemma, and it is all caused by the government's policy. Secretary, today you've heard from students and other people from the sector about the issues, complaints about management. I think this is all caused by the great leap forward, towards the goal of achieving the 60%. We cannot accept what's happening now. You need to admit responsibility first. You need to, on behalf of the government, confess that this is totally unacceptable situation. The crux of the matter is greed. The government wants to achieve its goal quickly, and institutions are greedy and trying to absorb as many students as possible, knowing that there's a vast market there. What happened to Ningnan is just the tip of the iceberg. Looking at the data, well, data that are obtained from asking the Bureau, how many students have been over-enrolled and what is the amount of deposits involved. But why didn't you have better planning? You can't just say that you leave it to the institutions. Actually, more than 40% of institutions over-enroll, and some over-enroll by 40 to 60%. Well, we know the names of these institutions. Well, your formula is about it to be to expire. Well, some institutions mention about the amount of deposits, and Hong Kong News says that for example, the $6 million made would be plow back into services for students or scholarships for students. But I'd like to hear from other institutions what they're going to use with the money they've made. As for quality assurance mechanism, well, the Ningnan report yesterday said that they can enroll students without going through the quality assurance mechanism. And how often does the quality assurance procedures or mechanism work? How often do they meet up for meetings? We're talking about subsidy now for students, and you claim that you look after the students' interests, but there are all kinds of issues like over-enrollment and excessive deposits and so forth. Everybody is saying that they're poor now. So does the Bureau have any clear indicators in relation to monitoring that institutions know what are the conditions that they need to meet? Secretary, I'm a associate professor in international relations, but I'm not involved in any of the running of the institutions. Secretary, monitoring mechanism? Well, as I said before, there are various aspects to it. Firstly, for not-for-profit or on the term of commodities, let's be careful with our use of the terms. Only non-profit making institutions can join the monitoring scheme. And there's also a principal who said this morning that for the money gained from deposits or extra enrollment, the money has to be used for scholarships or expansion or maintenance of campus. So the money gained have to be plowed back into the institutions. They can't be used or kept as profits. That's number one. And let me try to be fair here. Most of the institutions involved are subject to certain kinds of monitoring. I will look at the Ningnan report in detail, but universities do have their own mechanisms. Sometimes there are also personal decisions involved. So I can tell you definitely that I will spend a lot of time to go through the Ningnan report. Next one, Paul Chair. Well, Chairman, I'm a member of the Hong Kong Youth Council. Well, I'd like to thank you, particularly the young students, for speaking up this morning. And I heard your anger. I can feel your strong dissatisfaction. So obviously there are a lot of problems here, but because of time, we cannot go through each technical issue. But on two broad issues, I'd like to point out that it seems that the Secretary kept repeating that you're trying to govern the sector, you cited figures, you mentioned audits and so forth. So basically, it seems that the Bureau tried to approach the matter from a management perspective rather than having any long-term vision. But that's the key issue here. I think Mr. Chong, Student Chong, made an important point. I can tell you that when I was at your age, I had to actually borrow loans and do various jobs to try to fund my own education. So the matter of funding is, or finding money to support your education is not something unique to today's times. But for Chinese society, people are in a pitiful state in that they always try to or motivated by the desire to buy properties, and also many families want their children to have an excellent career. But not everyone can be the lead male or female character in the film. There must be people who are involved in behind-the-scenes work or in production work. But in Hong Kong, everyone wants to be the male or lead female character. Everybody wants to be in the spotlight. But many people are not interested or not suited for university education. So you need to think carefully where our resources should go. Besides funding degree places, we need to think of what about the support for apprenticeship or other kinds of training in preparing students for other jobs. Well, what's your question, Mr. Chair? Well, I'm not going to ask questions, but this is question and answer time. Yeah, but I think what I said would be helpful to the discussion. So I think we have spent too much resources on creating degree places that will only lead to mismatch. Even if you want to study, you can choose to study at other times. Look at other advanced countries. For example, not all their resources are spent on universities or grammar schools. People don't study for the purpose of getting a degree, but they are allowed to choose to study what they're interested in at different stages in their life. But now, if we actually allocate all resources to degree education or associate degree education for young people, I think that's a kind of wastage. In some other countries, for example, the shoes, even the shoes are made according to government guidelines. So it's not up to the market. I think we need to address the issue of what our starting point should be. That's like an opening remark on my part. I know you know a lot than me about the sector, but I just want to make my points clear. Okay, Ma Fong Kwok, Chen Chiu Hong, and Liu AK are lined up to speak. Ma Fong Kwok now. I think for the policy on the associate degrees, I'm sure when the policy was launched, there were various reasons for it. First is to enhance the overall quality of the society, and also there was economic restructuring then, and there was a need for finding the jobs right for young people and study paths for young people. But Now that we have this issue of over-enrollment, it shows that there's still a need for education among young people, even though we've seen problems over the past few years. I think from electoral questions or our panel, we discussed similar issues a lot of time, and yet the last government had failed to pay enough attention to this issue of associate degree programs. Secretary, I'm glad that now you have a chance. Put before you is a chance to address the issue of associate degree programs. Even though students were heavily critical of the government, but I think now it's time for the government, it's a good time for the government to show that you have the ability and commitment to address the problem. Is it that we have achieved nothing in the past? No, not really. Associate degrees did fulfill the needs of many young people. But I think in terms of the employment prospects or social recognition, we have not done enough to support those programs. So it's not something that relies on the effort of the Education Bureau alone. I think we need to work together to show to the young people that there are prospects ahead. Even with a lack of prospects, and yet we see the over-enrollment. So it shows how vast the need is over there. So the government really needs to look at this issue seriously. Having heard from the students and other operators today, I can see that they are very much hoping the government would step up measures to correct the situation. If we cancel all the associate degree programs, so what will the young people do? There are not enough degree places. I think we can only rectify the situation now. I have a question here now for the operators of associate degree programs. Now that you've over-enrolled students, the deposits that you have got, all the other fees that you have charged. So if the student quits in the end, so the deposits is supposed to be used to subsidize the tuitions. So the deposit should not be seen as extra revenue for the institutions. And if a student gives up on a study, the money should be spent for the benefit of students. I think the entire financial operations of the institutions are not transparent. So you're willing to be subject to government monitoring? I think who want to answer? Yeah, Mr. Ma said that the deposits can be turned into part of the payments for tuition fees. I think that's a good idea. I think we did have a meeting earlier, and my feeling is don't say that we are charging deposits and that means we are greedy. I think that's an unfair accusation. Hong Kong youth-based community college charges $6 million in deposits, and we created a $5 million endowment fund for scholarships, and we use the rest of the money for other purposes. Up to $100 million in total to improve our facilities and increase student activities. We're not making any profits there. Fernando Zhang. Please keep quiet. Next one, Fernando Zhang. Member Fernando Zhang. I think Professor Wong stressed that they are not reaping any profits. But for deposits, they are heavy expenses for poor families. I know a few cases, cases of families on CSSA who had to take out $5,000, and in the end, they had to borrow hard to get the money. It's not as easy as you said, but these poor families had to borrow from everyone to get the money, and they had to repay the money. And you said it lightly that you use the money for the benefit of students, but to these families, $5,000 is their monthly expenses for 2 months. I think it's a shame today that we're talking about tertiary education, There's so many doctors, professors here. I need to declare my interest. I work as a lecturer at PolyU. I'm also a PhD holder, but I think it's the students who made the points, who made the best points. We're here to talk about education, and yet now it seems like we're discussing a business. What's the difference between tertiary education and running a business? The government sticks to its 15,000 quota. And now we've pushed up the percentage from 18% to 60%. Young people with access to tertiary education, and there are actually a lot of opportunities out there, places out there, and yet they're all just part of a big business. And people running the businesses continue to ask the government for land and money. Yes, they're not putting money into their own pockets, I agree, but they do reap good returns. And the self-finance programs actually are poorly governed. At PolyU, I used to be a counselor, elected counselor of the universities. I know what the governance there is like. Not to mention self-finance programs. Even for UGC-funded programs, they are poorly governed. There's corruption everywhere. I've seen examples of that. I also have evidence. In fact, there's no need for me to point it out. Not to mention other institutions. In my own university, our own reports show that there are problems with governance. Well, we serve at the same university at the same time, yes, with your chairman. So you must be very clear. So there are all sorts of problems in the sector. Students have classes above a market. Classes are cut. Teachers don't know what they're doing. What kind of education are we talking about? You can, cut programs as you like. Well, for example, cut unprofitable programs like social work and try to, for the purpose of maximizing profits. So what's the whole point of education here? Who are we serving? Why is it that the school sponsoring bodies and or the institutions here are saying things so different from what the students say? What's your question? I'd like to ask the government first whether you have any plans to increase government-funded degree places. The percentage or the number has remained unchanged for 20 years. It's been capped at 18%. Okay, please give the Secretary time to answer. Secretary, would you increase the percentage?
Thank you. I'll be quick. 14,100 14,100, and it's going to be changed. And in terms of deposit, only an average of 10% are additional. The rest is being plowed back. It's being paid towards tuition. 10% of the deposit is used towards scholarships. Mr. Riley, I thank deputations and individuals and students to come to speak your mind. I wasn't here the entire time, but it is televised. So when I was working upstairs, I can still watch it. And I think we have reached a critical point. Secretary, your decision will greatly influence the development of the sector. We wanted to develop the self-financing of post-secondary education to resolve some problems, what we've heard from students. Students studying in sub-degree programs or self-financing programs are aggrieved. They have a very strong view towards the arrangement. Some students rely completely on loans to complete the course. And as they've said, before they graduate, they already have a huge loan to repay. Some institutions said that there are problems running self-financing programs because there is no subsidy. They ask the government to increase subsidies. I've been studying this issue for quite some time now. And I found that one of the problems is the polarization of subsidy. And that has caused problems. And I have shared my views with the Secretary on a number of occasions. Does it have to be polarized? If you have good results, you will be given a place in a UGC-funded place. Whereas for others, you will have to take self-financing courses. So compared to UGC-funded programs, self-financing institutions have no choice but to try to make a profit so that they can survive. And they will only offer commercialized courses or courses in the business sector because they are those ones that will make money. Students may not perform well at examinations. It may not be the fact that they are in general academically poorer. Then how come they don't receive any public funding? I asked the Secretary to ponder on this point. If you want to have a healthy development in the self-financing sector, there should not be any polarization of subsidy. Do you agree that that is the situation? Secretary, could you please answer? Do you agree that there is polarization? Compared to other places, in Hong Kong, the education sector is quite special. Over 90% of the places are publicly funded. And whereas in other places, the level of subsidy offered by the government is on the low side. We want to develop a self-financing sector to complement the publicly funded sector. I only have 1 minute, and I will let Mr. Ip Kin Yuen ask the question. Thank you. About infrastructure, I would like to hear some answers. This is a follow-up on other members' questions. The role of subsidy. Infrastructure is a very important foundation. So can the Secretary give me a clear answer? Do you have such plans? If not, why not? Secretary. Infrastructure on university education or tertiary education, the current mechanism is transparent. If it's necessary, we'll provide dormitory. There is a recent example that a lot of land has been designated with a certain use, and then that has been made clear, and we will only use whatever is necessary. And when it comes to new courses, say for example, nursing or international cuisine, through other means, we have responded to the situation and provided assistance. When it comes to infrastructure, land is always a problem. So you think that Hang Seng Management College do not have an urgent need? The first session is finished. Thank you for attending. If you have anything to add, please do so by way of submission. Written submission, and if you have any submission that to give us, you can give it to us. We will have a short break. We will start the next session in 30 seconds.